All right.
Okay, good.
Ready to go? Welcome to the October 13th Complete Streets Commission meeting. This is a teleconference meeting with the Complete Streets Commission members, city staff, and members of the public participating remotely to ensure proper social distancing in this federal, state, and local emergency. My name is Adina Levin. As the chair of the body, I would like to introduce Complete Streets Commission members and staff present. Commissioners present include Brian Altman, Katie Baruzzi, Sally Cole, J.K. Jensen, Elizabeth King, and Lydia Lee. Commissioners Jackie Sebergen and John Cromie are absent. Staff present include Kevin Chen and Patrick Palmer. Patrick, can you please provide instructions to the Complete Streets Commission and members of the public on how the meeting will proceed from here?
Yes, thank you, Chair Levin and members of the Complete Streets Commission. Welcome everyone to the October 13th Complete Streets Commission meeting, and thank you for attending. At this time, we ask that the members of the commission please remain on screen for the duration of the meeting. You will be able to control your own webcams and microphones. Staff will engage webcams and microphones to make presentations and respond to the members of the commission. For members of the public who are in attendance and wish to provide public comment, after the chair calls for public comment on the item you wish to speak on, you can engage the raised hand feature. I will then have the ability to open your microphone and you can provide your public comment to the Complete Streets Commission. For members of the public who are calling in from a landline or a cell phone, you can also press *9 to raise your virtual hand. And that concludes the instructions, and I return the meeting to the chair.
All right, thank you so much. So we will start off with item C, reports and announcements, under which staff and commission members may communicate general information of interest regarding matters within the jurisdiction of the commission. No commission discussion or action can occur on any of the presented items. Can Kevin please proceed with reports and announcements?
Great, thank you, Madam Chair, and good evening to everyone. Give me a second, I'm going to go ahead and pull up my file here. Great, awesome. So thanks again and good evening. So I have a few updates for the commission that the City Council have taken action on since the last time we met. So first and foremost, I want to congratulate the commission. Our work plan got approved by the City Council, so that's certainly a lot of work went into it, a lot of discussion. So really applaud the commission for getting that through. Second, the City Council also approved two primarily housing developments in the Bayfront area, which later on you'll be hearing a project that is related to those a little bit later on. But those are the Menlo Uptown and the Menlo Portal projects. So for those of you that are following that, we're happy to know that those developments have been approved by the City Council. Another big item that was approved by the City Council since the last time we met was the permanent installation of the Broadhaven Traffic Common Plan. Again, one of those projects that has been years in the making, so really happy that it's past the next milestone. In terms of the project itself, the approval contains a few new elements that I wanted to just identify for the benefit of the commission. First and foremost, the commission's recommendation for no bulb outs on Newbridge Street was adopted by the City Council. So moving forward, we will be taking out those temporary bulb outs on Newbridge. The ones on the cross streets will continue to be moving forward. However, the ones on Newbridge will no longer be, and will be taking the appropriate action to remove the temporary bulb outs. Additionally, the council decided to replace the gateway features with neighborhood signs. So those would be neighborhood signs that we can install on the standard pole in the back of the sidewalk or in the sidewalk, depending on constraints. But those would be certainly good opportunities to remind the drivers that they're entering into the neighborhood and should be driving accordingly. Lastly, the City Council also decided to recommend approve speed humps along Choco and Newbridge Street. So those would be new features added to the plan as well. And of course, subsequently we'll be making the design and implementation. But really happy that we got that project to the next milestone. A couple other projects I just wanted to highlight here. First and foremost, the City Council also adopted a resolution supporting the Sustainable Transportation Planning Grant. So the grant, if we were successful in getting that grant, it will be used to conduct a comprehensive shuttle service analysis for the city. So fingers crossed for our team right here. Lastly, the TMA, the City Council had a session on the TMA last night and approved the recommendations from the staff recommendation. However, there was a desire to have a communication with Mezzanine Works a little bit earlier. So the direction that we received from the City Council is to engage the conversation more in the near term, rather than the original proposal, which was more of a mid to far term recommendation. So certainly a change in the recommendation, and definitely want to make sure that the Commission is aware of that. So with that, I will go ahead and conclude my reports and announcements. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Are there any members of the public who have comments on reports and announcements? If so, please raise your hand. And if not, we will move on the agenda. So moving on to general public comment, item D, under which the public may address the Complete Streets Commission on any subject not listed on the agenda. Each speaker may address the commission once under public comment for a limit, once under general public comment for a limit of 3 minutes. You can also later in this meeting talk about items that are on the agenda. Please clearly state your name and address or political jurisdiction in which you live. The commission cannot act on items not listed on the agenda, and therefore the commission cannot respond to non-agendized items brought up under general public comment other than to provide general information. Patrick, is there any public comment for this general public comment item that are not on the agenda?
It does not look like it yet. For anyone who might have just joined us, please just raise the virtual hand to use the raise hand feature, or if you're calling in, you can press *9. It does not look like we have any comments.
Okay, so we will now move on to regular business, under which the commission considers recommendations from city staff on policy matters or administrative actions that require commission approval. The first of these is item E1, to approve the Complete Streets Commission regular meeting minutes of September 8th, 2021. Any clarifications from the commission on the minutes? I'm seeing Katie with the hand.
This is nitpicky, but I remember that Commissioner Cole abstained, the Vice Chair Cole abstained from the vote because of, I think, I don't want to put words in her mouth, but I think there was a pretty long discussion about, needing a more comprehensive bike ped scope for that area. And I don't think that was necessarily captured in the motion. And I don't know whether it would be appropriate to put something like, there's a brief 1-sentence description of the discussion. I thought that was actually a pretty important part of the discussion, and it might be useful to have that in the minutes for the public record. But I don't know if.
I agree.
Okay.
Is that something that staff can do in the kind of action minutes that we take? And I can't remember honestly whether it was in the motion, in which case it can be.
It wasn't totally in the motion. The motion included, it was implied maybe. We talked about mid-block pedestrian crossing and other pedestrian infrastructure that supports safe connections, the Menlo Portal development directly across Constitution Drive. So we did, but I think there was this bigger picture vision that we were looking for. And there is a sentence sort of descriptive about the discussion that says the commission discussed project scope, roadway congestion and conflicts, driveway alignment, bayfront area pedestrian and bicycle plan, and street design. And I think like we discussed the lack of a bayfront area pedestrian and bicycle plan. Kind of.
I really do agree with you. Sorry, Adina, you're naughty. I'll go after you. Go ahead.
Okay, I think that is fair, and we did give that as clear direction to staff. So even in the action minute format, can that be captured in terms of that this was the direction to staff and not just subjects that we talked about?
Agreed. To be completely accurate, when I abstained, I didn't say why I was abstaining, but I said it at the end of the meeting. So it's probably best captured as something we asked staff to look into and pursue in the future. Was that more holistic ped bike plan?
Maybe like discussed a desire to see.
Yes, the need and desire to see it.
A desire to see a more holistic ped bike plan for this area under development, something along those lines. I know it sounds minor, but I just think.
No, I agree, Katie. It wasn't minor at the time. We did discuss it at length. Several of us felt strongly about it. I don't think this goes in the minutes, but I did say at the end that the reason I was abstaining is when that particular aspect of the conversation came up, it was met with complete silence from the Facebook group. And I felt that they should have indicated more engagement around it or more interest in the conversation.
Yes. So
Okay.
does staff understand the clarification to the minutes being requested here by the commission?
Yeah, I believe so. So we can definitely make the that one line that Commissioner Baruzzi had mentioned to be reflective of the actual notion that was brought up by Commissioner Cole. Yes.
Okay. So with that clarification that we discussed the need for those things, any other clarifications of the minutes before seeking a motion? Sorry, was that a motion? Sorry, audio problems. Was that a motion?
I can make a motion to approve the minutes with the change requested.
I can second.
All right. Before we vote here, are there any members of the public with comments about the minutes? I am not seeing any members of the public with comments about the minutes. Can staff help us to vote?
Great, thank you very much. So we have a motion and a second to approve the minutes with the aforementioned conversation about the updates to the verbiage. A motion by Commissioner Baruzzi, a second by Commissioner Cole. For those commissioners that would like to vote affirmative to this item, can you please raise your hand? So that's unanimous, everyone here. Great, thank you very much.
Okay, so we will now move on to the substantive items, which are, and I believe that E3 and E4 will be presented together. Is that the case? So we will hear from staff with instruction on how we will proceed with items, E2 and E3.
Great,
which are loading zones.
Yes, thank you for that, Madam Chair. So at this moment in time, staff is asking the commission to basically listen to one presentation for E2 and E3. They are, however, two separate independent projects. However, given the nature of the projects themselves, and also some of the holistic conversations that the commissioners want to have with regard to some of the topics like this, staff thought it would be a good opportunity for these two projects to be heard simultaneously, at least through the presentation. However, requesting that the commission have your discussions and voting independently for these two projects, as they are, at the end of the day, two separate independent projects. So with that in mind, I will go ahead and open up the presentation and also do my screen sharing before I provide my remarks. Let's see.
While we're waiting for Kevin's screen sharing, I'll just point out on the subject of minutes that when I joined the Bicycle Commission, commissioners were taking the minutes ourselves. And so I just want to appreciate staff who take minutes, and yeah, it's nicer not to have to do it ourselves.
Yeah, definitely. I appreciate the fact that it's action minutes. Although sometimes I do agree with you all that sometimes the context probably does need some refinement as well. So great. So good evening, Madam Chair and fellow commissioners. Kevin Chen, City Transportation Engineer with the City of Menlo Park. This evening we have two items in front of you tonight, E2 and E3. Both are requests to establish passenger loading zones for the two recently approved housing developments that we have discussed a little bit earlier on today. The format tonight is a little bit unique compared to others. So staff will be providing a brief remark with a couple introduction slides, and followed by handing over the presentation to the applicant, which in this case would be Greystar and the consulting team. And then after they presented their presentation, staff will then take over with a couple concluding slides. I also want to acknowledge Associate Transportation Engineer Renee Bell is in attendance tonight as well. While I'll be the one doing most of the presentations, he will be available to answer some questions regarding E3 if there are particular questions that you would like to know that I cannot answer. So want to acknowledge his presence here as well. So with that being said, I will go ahead and start my presentation. So again, tonight's item is the hoping for the commission to establish the passenger loading zones for the two upcoming housing development projects. Tonight, I will be going over briefly the background, like I mentioned a little bit earlier, and then handing over the presentation to the applicant, followed by the recommendation and the next steps. So as I mentioned a little bit earlier, we wanted to take this opportunity to present this project and this bayfront area in a more holistic style. So staff went ahead and prepared this exhibit with the purpose of identifying some of the ongoing developments as well as existing pedestrian and bicycle facilities within the bayfront area. So here is a quick snapshot of all the facilities and the developments in the area. This exhibit will be available as part of the minute, or if there's any commissioners interested in obtaining a copy of this, we'll be happy to share that with the commission as well. But here, I just wanted to kind of quickly highlight the two projects that we'll be talking about are the Menlo Portal and Menlo Uptown, and specifically regarding the passenger loading zone that the applicant is requesting. So here's just a quick snapshot of where they are relative to the entire bayfront area, and the yellow boxes represent the loading zone, approximately the loading zone area that the applicant is requesting. So again, both are projects in primarily housing projects. However, they will need a separate independent motion for each location. So with that, I will go ahead and hand over my reign to the applicant. Please note that staff will be the one navigating the slide, so the applicant will have to say, next slide, the good old next slide. So while I pull up the applicant's presentation, if we can have, I think it was Matt, if you can turn on your mic and your screen, I would appreciate that.
All right, Kevin, thanks for the introduction. I appreciate that. Good evening, members of the Complete Streets Commission, city staff, members of the public. My name is Matt Udaj. I'm the Senior Director of Development at Greystar. With me tonight is Ruel Chan, the civil engineer for both the Menlo Uptown and Menlo Portal projects. Tonight, I'd like to present two separate projects to you, as Kevin mentioned. They have been approved by the City Council. Those projects are Menlo Uptown and Menlo Portal. The projects are separate. However, at staff's request, we are presenting them together tonight. For each project, we're seeking the Commission's approval to establish loading zones. So on the screen now, this is Menlo Uptown. Menlo Uptown, could you go to the next slide, please, Kevin? So you already showed kind of the general overview. So Menlo Uptown is located in the bayfront area between Jefferson and Constitution. And then off to the left side of the screen is where Menlo Portal was located. Next slide, please. So just some general information about Menlo Uptown. The whole project is 483 units. There's two main components. One is 441 rental apartments, and then there's also 42 for-sale townhomes, which were the townhomes were the 3-story building, whereas the multifamily building was the 7-story building. This building does have a community amenity, which is the Ravenswood Family Health Network Urgent Care Center, which is located in one of the multifamily buildings. There's about 24,000 square feet of open space at this project. And there's also a large paseo for connectivity between Jefferson and Constitution drives. And the project is LEED Gold. Next slide, please. So at this point, I want to hand over to Ruel to talk more about the passenger loading zone.
Yeah, thanks, Matt, for the introduction, and thank you, Kevin, for the introduction. My name is Ruel Chan. I work for BKF Engineers, and we're the civil engineering consultant on behalf of Greystar. We thank you for the time here. As Matt has mentioned, we are proposing a vehicle turnout pocket along Constitution Drive, as you see on the screen. It's more or less where the red arrow is pointing at. And on the next slide here, Kevin, I will show that I want to talk about the technical part of it. Before I get into it, I do want to just talk about the current condition on Constitution Drive right now. It is currently a 2-lane driveway or roadway going page left and page right with a dedicated Class 2 bike lane. That's the current condition. There is currently no street parking on either side of the street. It is simply a 2-lane roadway in each direction. The main purpose of the vehicle turnout pocket will be to kind of provide a safe, kind of adequate space for passenger drop-off and pickup zone. Examples would be, ride-share services such as Uber or Lyft. As you see on the screen here, we're proposing an opening about 66 feet to accommodate up to 2 vehicles at a time. That would 2 standard vehicles that would be sufficient enough to kind of pull in and pull out in a timely manner. Also, you can see here the public sidewalk will be kind of aligned appropriately to follow that alignment so that there's no disruption on the pedestrian access. The blue dashed line is the continued Class 2 bike lane. Again, the proposed layout here will be situated so that the vehicles will be to provide safe passenger pickup without blocking the current vehicle travel lane and the current bicycle lane as well too. So that pretty much concludes the kind of the layout. It's pretty self-explanatory, simple. For now, we'll just conclude the presentation for Uptown. We want to get into Portal next, but right now we just want to leave it up to any questions or any kind of discussion items we want to talk about here specifically for Uptown here.
Yeah, Kevin, did you want us to? Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
So I'm trying to see if in Zoom here, I see that somebody has a hand raised, Commissioner Lee, and I'm going to have a question, but I want to wait for both of them. Commissioner Lee.
This might apply to the other project as well, but I'm wondering if what the parking and drop off situation is for the developments themselves. are there other ways for cars to like meet people than what we see here? I'm not, necessarily saying this isn't a good idea. I just want to know if there are other ways that people can get into the complex by cars.
For residents that live at these projects, there is parking on site. And then there are off-street loading zones, more for move-ins, move-outs, that type of activity. These specifically would be more like short duration Uber, Lyft, pickup, drop off, or that type of parking.
Okay, and then in front of this particular loading zone would be in front of the townhomes, is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
So I'm wondering why it seems like the multifamily might have more need for, because there's more people there, right? So why not put the loading zone in front of the multifamily portion?
Yes, I
can
totally agree. Yeah, Ruel, can you handle
Yeah,
that?
I can speak. Yeah, so Lee, that's a good question. We did study that in a couple of scenarios. Not quite showing it. Actually, Kevin, if you go to the next slide, it probably gives you the overall site plan of the project. Maybe the next one. So this is the overall site plan. We're proposing the drop-off zone kind of where, more or less, where the word Constitution Drive is. It's kind of in that area there. So you see, if we did propose it on the Constitution Drive along the multifamily side, the way the site's designed, because there's numerous constraints on proposing a drop-off zone in that area. The building is right next to it. There's some grading and site issues we actually have to kind of contend with. I'm not going to get too technical, but bottom line is this site is in a flood zone, so we have to raise the building high. And so if we have to kind of put the sidewalk into our site, it's going to do a kind of a domino effect in terms of the site design and sidewalks and grading. It's ideally that is the right location, but from a site constraint standpoint, it just wasn't going to be feasible. So we thought where the townhome would have a little more flexibility in accommodating those constraints would be a lot easier.
Got it. Okay, I'll pass it on to my fellow commissioners.
Right. Any other questions after this one? Otherwise, we can take more questions after. I see that Commissioners Jensen and Cole have hands up.
Yeah, just wondering, you had mentioned something about dedicated parking or arrangements for the multifamily homes. Can you just direct us to where that exists on this map so that we can have a comparison for where we're looking at the cutout coming in?
Yes, so we have actually a parking throughout the whole site. In the two buildings to the left, each of those buildings are the multifamily rental apartment buildings. They're about 220 apartment units, and there's a similar number of parking spaces in them. And so there's the building on the north, there's a driveway on Constitution. The building on the south, there's a driveway on Jefferson Drive. And then the parking is in the lower floor or two of the building. It's an automatic automatic parking system.
Okay, thank you.
Right, Vice Chair Cole.
I just had a quick question. One was, is there a lack of turnouts in general around this area, like other buildings, to the right or the left? And are you concerned about any competition to use this turnout? And also, how did you determine that a 2-car turnout would fit demand?
We didn't really study outside of our project, unfortunately. So we don't know if, by all means, if someone else in the other project would use it. It's probably hard to kind of relegate that.
Yeah.
But as far as the 2-vehicle, I mean, in terms of site constraints, like I said, we just thought the 2-vehicle will be a standard kind of a practice. I mean, we would probably love to get more, but it's going to be impacting a lot more in terms of the site constraints. As of right now, we just thought the 2-vehicle would be kind of like the typical demand at that point. We didn't really do a kind of complete study of how much, ride share is going to be needed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Any more questions on this one before we get to the next one, and then we can ask questions about the both of them? Vice Chair Cole, do you have your hand up for another question, or is it a legacy hand? Okay, great. Can the applicant move on to the next one too?
Okay, now I'd like to introduce you all to Menlo Portal. In the foreground is a 2-story office building or 3-story office building. And then the background is a 335 unit multifamily rental apartment building. Next slide, please. So here's just a layout. We've already looked at this with Kevin's introduction, but you can see the taller building in red is the multifamily building, and then to the left is the office building located, on Independence and Constitution Drive. There's Facebook campus buildings, across the street from us on Constitution, and then also across the street on Independence. There would be a paseo going in between the office building and the residential building, and also it's publicly accessible open space in that area. Next slide, please. So I already hit on the unit count and the office building. And there's the 10,000 square feet of open space and the connectivity, and it's a LEED Gold building. Next slide, please. And at this time, I'd like to turn it over to Ruel.
Yeah, very similar to the Menlo Uptown. In this situation here for the Menlo Portal, we are proposing 2 drop-off zones, one on Constitution and one on Independence, as you see here on the screen. It's going to accommodate up to 2 vehicles. I can kind of, if you know, next slide, Kevin, I can talk about the technical layout. So this is kind of the overall plan view. Like we mentioned, I'll just take a few minutes here on talking about the current conditions so we all understand what we're facing with today. On Constitution Drive, as it stands today, it's currently a 1-lane traveling from page left to right. It's a 2-lane in one direction, 1 lane being a dedicated left turn lane only into the Menlo Gateway project across the street. And then the 2nd lane will be a through lane going across Constitution with a dedicated class 2 bike lane, as you see on the screen here. On Independence, it is a 2-lane direction, page north and south and south to north. On Independence, as a vehicle comes Constitution, it's a right turn only. You're not allowed to make a left turn off of to Marsh. It's just a right turn lane only. So that's the current condition today. Oh, I forgot to mention, Independence also has a class 3 bike lane as well too, as opposed to a class 2 on Constitution. So as you can see here, we're very identical to Uptown as far as the configuration for the drop-off zones. 66 feet, accommodates up to 2 vehicles on each direction. And it's a very same layout. So at this time, that's pretty concludes the presentation for Portal. We'll leave it up to questions for anybody at this time.
Great.
Okay, great. So before we open up for questions, Madam Chair, if you don't mind, I'm just going to go ahead and present a couple more slides from staff's end, just introducing the recommendations themselves and also the next steps. So give me a couple minutes. Oops. So as we mentioned a little bit earlier today, we're seeking the Commission's approval for the 5-minute loading zones for both projects. Again, they will be independently voted upon by themselves. The first project, the Menlo Uptown project with 1 cutoff space, would be a total of 2 spaces. For the Menlo Portal project, the recommendation is a total of 2 cutouts for a total of 4 spaces, which both are within the power of the Commission to approve. So if we get the affirmative from the Commission tonight, the general public does have a 15-day appeal period. So after today, they will have 15 days to appeal to the City Council of the decision. a yes or no. Either party would have an opportunity to appeal to the city council. And again, assuming an affirmative vote and then no appeals, then the applicant will then proceed with the final design and of course the actual implementation as part of their project approval. That is their subsequent next steps. So with that, I will go ahead and conclude the presentation and open it up for Q&A.
So I'm going to go ahead and make a comment or a question now. Actually, we'll take questions and then we'll take public comments and then come back for discussion. Is there any space, or would these spaces serve as the stop for a public bus? I sent a note, I think it was this morning, to City Council and to staff for the commission. I don't know whether the note was shared with the commission. That was a report on the progress of Reimagine Samtrans, where Samtrans is redoing all of their bus routes. And one of the topics that has come up with regard to this area is about, whether it will get public bus service. When Samtrans started their Reimagine Samtrans process, these projects had not yet been approved. And so the bus that goes by this area stops out on Bayfront Expressway. But when Samtrans was taking feedback, there were several people who made comments saying that because there are new residential developments, office developments, and a school in this area, that the bus should serve the area. And, they're going to be Facebook buses serving the area. So, logically, a public bus should be able to get in here too. So Samtrans has said that they would, consider and look at that. They haven't come back and talked about how the bus would serve the area yet. But that seems like a logical thing to do. And in the discussion about the developments at City Council, one of the concerns that was raised by council members and community members was the need for the bus service. So I am wondering whether these stops would be used for bus pullouts or whether there would be other provision for bus pullouts.
Great, thank you. I think I'll go ahead and take this one as staff. So when the project first approached the city with the request for the cutouts, the consideration of buses were not one of them. However, given kind of the recent development that Chair Levin had mentioned, it is certainly a possibility that we can utilize these cutouts as a bus stop as well, because they are at the end of the day going to be 5-minute loading zones and open to all public members as they are within the right of way. With that being said, certainly it's probably something that we'll want to explore a little bit further once we know whether or not there will be new routes coming into this Bayfront area, also where the stop signs or where the ideal stop locations could be. There's certainly opportunities for us to revisit this as well. I think those would be good candidates. However, they obviously wouldn't be the only candidates available.
Okay. Let me make sure I understand what you just said before going on to Commissioner Lee. When you said that these would be good candidates, but there would be other candidates available, like it seems like doing pullouts is something that is done when the building is getting built. So what do you mean by other candidates?
Right. So there's still other locations where those bus stops could go. What I meant is, they don't necessarily have to be at the frontage of these developments. There's certainly other parcels that might be better candidates for a bus stop, considering all of the developments that will be going into this area in the far term. So certainly I want to recognize that these two are the first two projects that will be going into the Bayfront area. However, as you might have noticed, given the previous slides that I presented, there are quite a few other developments that will be going in the near future as well. So we certainly want to look at this from a more holistic aspect as well, and not just necessarily looking at it as it currently stands.
Okay, thank you very much. Commissioner Lee.
Yeah, I'd like to see like with the previous project, just to get a quick sense of like the parking situation for the Menlo Portal development and what is available to the office and rental folks.
Okay, I'll leave that question to Matt.
Yeah, could you jump to that slide? I think it might be the last slide in the set. Essentially, the office building in the ground, the first and second floors has structured parking.
Mhm.
And then the residential building also has parking. Yeah, so in the ground floor of the office building, that's all structured parking. And then in the multifamily building, the ground floor is also, well, it's parking with stackers, so some mechanical parking.
Okay, so then my follow-up is then why two parking, two sort of unloading zones here? Because from as far as I know, is it like typical to have 5, loading zones in front of office buildings?
Yeah, I think it's similar to the situation with the Uptown project. Just based on the grades and stuff that Ruel could talk on, we weren't able to put the loading zones in front of the multifamily building. So essentially, we have an office building, we have a multifamily building where we think that both workers in the office building and residents in the multifamily building would both want to be accessing these loading zones.
Okay. Yeah, I have some other thoughts about putting one on Independence because of the lack of bike lanes there, but I'll save that for the discussion. So.
All right, thanks, Commissioner King.
Thanks so much. Kevin, can we go back to the slide that was the overview where we could see the streets and the lanes and the overall project?
Is this the right one?
No, it's the one where we can actually see the left turn lane. And it has more of the buildings in it.
The left turn lane, so that would be the applicants.
Because my question is this, perfect.
Yes.
If I understand this correctly, across the street from you is the Facebook building that had the capacity for 3,500 people. If I'm correct on that. And I'm concerned that you're going to have a lot of Uber drop-offs in your proposed drop-off spaces, and I don't see the crosswalk.
It's Commissioner King, are you suggesting that there should be a crosswalk in between the two developments?
I'm anticipating that I am suggesting that because I'm anticipating that your pullouts are going to get utilized by the building across the street. Okay. So it might be a consideration.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion, and that's something that we can look into definitely with the applicant. Matt, is there a crosswalk that is currently proposed as part of this project, or don't believe there is, but maybe I just confirm with you.
Yeah, we're certainly open to staff and the commission's recommendations on a crosswalk in this location. I mean, we're very supportive of it.
Okay. Great, thanks. So before we move on to discussion. Want to see if there are any members of the public who have comments on this item. And if any members of the public would like to comment, please use the raise hand feature in your Zoom, and you'll have up to 3 minutes. And if not, we will bring it back to the commission for discussion and then possible motions. Any comments by commissioners? All right, I have one, which is I'm pending hearing from fellow commissioners. I'm okay with the loading zones, but would want to see consideration for also where public bus stops will go in this area. Whether it be in this location or some other location that is convenient to the current and future buildings. Planning for public bus service is ought to be considered, as well as, per the previous discussion and the previous commissioner's comments, the idea that when you want a live, work, play area, you can expect that people are going to be crossing the street between an office building and homes or stores or schools, whatever it is that are different uses that people are near. People are going to want to cross the street, and so crosswalks should also be part of the picture. That makes sense. Commissioner Lee.
Yeah, looking at this picture, which is actually really useful. I guess I'm just, as someone who's visited these multifamily developments and tried to figure out how to find people within the garage, and I mean, it can be very confusing, right, to someone who's not familiar or doesn't live in one of these places. So I appreciate having turnouts, and I think as a commission we talk about ride sharing and the need to actually have a place for ride sharing, because as opposed to dedicated parking spaces. So I see the need there, but the one in front of the office building, when you come around Independence, it looks a little bit concerning to me, because, well, first of all, we don't have any bike lanes on Independence. It's just Sharrows, as far as I know. Kevin, that's right? Sharrows on Independence. And then you've got the left turn. So whoever is pulling out of that turnout is, well, first of all, you're not in front of the multifamily. You're pretty far from the multifamily there. I mean, the other turnout makes more sense to me. So you've got to make a left. You have to make a left. So you've got to negotiate the left with people coming around behind you, and also bicyclists, if anybody's coming down that way, right? So there's a lot going on pretty close to the intersection right there. And that's why I'm a little bit like, as a driver, I think I might be a little bit nervous, because I can't really see very far. There's the curve there that I've got to look over my shoulder. So I've got to look around, basically look around me a little bit. And then, just possible anxiety producing circumstances being so close to the intersection. So that's kind of my concern. I don't know if that was something that you guys, engineering side, thought about at all when they were figuring out where to put this. And again, I understand the need for, making it work with the site, which is really important, but, it just seems a little awkwardly placed there for a lot of reasons.
Commissioner, can you, just to reiterate, you're talking about the loading zone on Constitution and not Independence, is that correct?
No, on Independence, not Constitution.
Oh, on Independence, okay.
Yeah,
Can you explain one more time your
My
concern
concerns?
about the
Okay.
left turn lane? I guess I wasn't catching that part.
So Independence doesn't have any bike lanes on it. So
it's
bike lanes are,
I'm sorry, they do have a class 3 bike lane right now.
class 3 is essentially not a bike lane. It's like you share the road with the cars. That strike me as I know they call it class 3, but to my mind, you're just in traffic, right? So, so bicycles are coming on the traffic. anybody who's in that pullout has to, negotiate whatever traffic's behind them, plus the corner, everyone's coming up to that corner to make a left turn. So there's just a lot going on pretty close to the intersection. And it's also farther away from the multifamily, which seems where the need is. So I'm just questioning the need for a turnout there.
When you say left turn, if a car's pulled into this loading zone, they can only make a right turn on Constitution.
Sorry, right turn. Sorry, yes. They have to make a right turn on the Constitution.
Yeah, right. Okay. That's what I make sure. Okay.
Right. And then there's immediate turnout there as well. So you've got 2 turnouts within pretty close proximity, which, any bicyclist is coming down would have to deal with 2 turnouts in close proximity as well. I mean, you are wrapping the pedestrians around, which is great, but I'm just imagining myself as a bicyclist coming down Independence, right, heading towards Constitution, being like, okay, there's a car pulling out, there are other cars I want to make a left. We all have to figure out how to negotiate with each other as we come up pretty quickly to this intersection.
Okay. Yeah, that definitely a legitimate concern. We'll definitely study some options and see what we can do to kind of better navigate the circulation here.
And then this is a small point, but I would think that with any of these turnouts, you would want to include enough, like I think on Oak Grove, the city staff did a great job by painting door zone markings on the road so that it's clear that there are, bicyclists coming around. Like I would hope that you would follow NACTO best practices for whatever design for pullouts are these days.
Okay.
All right, thanks. So moving on to Commissioner Altman.
Hi, a couple questions. One, like UPS or Amazon, how would their deliveries work? Do they park there temporarily, or they go into the other parking?
Matt, do you want to talk about that, or you want me to?
Yeah, sure. I can talk about that. That's actually a good segue from Commissioner Lee's comment. We would envision that one of these loading zones would be used, for like a FedEx or an Amazon or someone to do like a quick delivery to the office building. The office building doesn't have a loading zone internal to it.
Okay, so is there any way to estimate, at peak volume, at peak hours, what the volume of the traffic will be for Uber plus Amazon plus UPS? My concern is that with 2 spots there, and if somebody's waiting to get in there during peak load, that's going to put some pressure on that intersection. You see what I'm saying? That you have 2 vehicles in the turnout and then 1 waiting. That basically is going to clog that all up if it's at peak hours. Is there any way to estimate the estimate the volume that would be there for peak hours? You see my question?
I'll defer to Ruel or staff on that. But one comment I'd like to make, though, is this is an artistic rendering. There's a more precise document for Portal that we looked at that actually has like the dimensions. And so I don't know that the drop-off zone or the loading zone is, exactly in this location. So I just as an FYI, but yeah, I would.
But still, the point would be if there was a vehicle waiting,
Yeah,
it's going to clog up Constitution, right?
that's a good point. Kevin, I'm not sure if you can speak upon the kind of the vehicle studies that's been in this area. I can't really speak on the actual studies as far as peak hours or morning hours. I don't know, Kevin, if you have any thoughts on that from a staff level standpoint that you can share.
Yeah, so that's typically not part of the kind of traditional traffic study as part of the project EIO or the environmental impact analysis. I will say that Commissioner Altman, your point is very much well taken. There are certainly possibilities, especially with all the activities going on, that there might be someone there might be 2 cars parked there and have a 3rd car needing to maybe circulate around to wait for that space to free it up. I would say it's probably going to be very difficult to predict that type of demand given that most of those type of demands that you mentioned are very much driven by the need of a residents if they wanted to Uber Eat, or if they needed a ride home or a ride to work or for their recreational activities. And the delivery trucks, typically for delivery trucks, we do, they do, if it's a bigger type of delivery, we typically is done during the off-peak hours. However, given the area, it's going to be very hard to predict the demand there. I think one of the recommendations that we could have as part of tonight's meeting is that if there's a desire from the commission to explore maybe the possibility of expanding that in the future, that's certainly something that we can take in. Again, given the type of demand, it's going to be very hard to predict.
Sorry, Kevin, expanding what in the future?
Like for instance, for the cutout, if there's a desire, if in the future, once the buildings are occupied, and then we see a consistent over demand of the cutout area, that perhaps we come back and start thinking about expanding the area a little bit more, if that's kind of where kind of a Commissioner Altman is heading to.
Just seems like there's a lot of people there now. Going to be a lot of people, a lot of traffic. Per the previous comment on both sides of the road. We're not just looking at the building here in the drawing, but also, another 3,500, 5,000, whatever it is on the left side. It just seems like an awful lot to be going down Constitution. It also seems a little piecemeal to me. It's like we take a look at these two, we took a look at the left-hand turn last meeting. It just seems like it's open to a lot of congestion.
Yeah, no, I think that's a very much point well taken. And again, with a situation like this, we certainly don't want to also start parking all the cars along the street as well. So we wanted to kind of find that balance, because like Matt and Raul mentioned, as far as the Bayfront area is concerned, there are no on-street parking on any of the streets. Constitution, Jefferson, Independence, they all have some type of bicycle facilities that prevents any on-street parking. So hence the need for the cutout in the first place. But we certainly also want to balance that by essentially kind of not over design the area and then end up with a bunch of cars parking along the cutout as well. So I do recognize that it is a bit of a balancing act that we're working on here. So that's why if the commission has a desire to allow expansion of the cutout in the future, that's certainly something that we can take into consideration when we go into the design phase.
Okay. Thanks. Vice Chair Cole.
Yes, I guess so just a little bit of background. I work at Apple Park in Cupertino. And I was a little surprised when you mentioned that there was no place for sort of commercial loading with regard to the office building, like dropping off, a Staples or an Amazon or a package of some kind. Because there's like a entire workforce at Apple Park that have to field not just those types of things, but all the people who work in these office buildings who order personal packages to be delivered to their office. It's really, really considerable. So given that, I wanted to ask, is the same true for the residential section of this development, in that there's not like a place for, an Amazon or something to drop off packages for all these people who live in these buildings?
There is a loading, an off-street loading at the multifamily building.
At the multifamily building. Okay. But in terms of like these townhouses here that we see along Constitution, like an Amazon truck is doing what there? Because obviously there's no street parking. right? Like potentially going to the loading zone, but then they've got quite a walk to the townhouse. I mean, I'm starting to really wonder if these two pullouts are just going to be loading zones and really, really active loading zones. And maybe not really supply the amenity that you're anticipating, which is to help people with rides to the airport and lifts and other things. Because between like Uber Eats and DoorDash and Amazon and all the rest of it, I don't really see other alternatives, at least within this drawing, to satisfy that demand. And that concerns me. And then I think these are becoming something that you might not anticipate and maybe not performing the use that you intend.
Yeah, I guess one note is on the townhomes, which are at the Uptown project, so not actually in this like questions rendering that's on the screen currently. There is separate areas to pull off in that area.
Okay. Well, that's my concern around the congestion here and the purpose that they'll serve. I would not underestimate the amount of traffic day and night you're going to get with, personal deliveries to office folks and also the other types of businesses I discussed. The other thing is when Chair Levin mentioned the crosswalks issue and the bus issue, I think, Kevin, one of the points I'd like clarity on is that when a commissioner, since I'm new to the commission, when someone mentions something like that, like, I think my recommendation is that we look at this area that we're all looking at right now and look at the need for crosswalks. Is that an action item that then gets followed up on? Because we can make these comments and they're very good comments. I mean, it's really kind of surprised me when Commissioner King asked about a crosswalk and there's no crosswalk there. I thought that was really puzzling. So this might be a miss that, these commissioners have pointed out. What is the process for knowing if there's follow-up?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And I think piggyback off some of the conversations that we had at the last meeting as well. So in this particular case, the Commissioner King obviously brought up a really good point. So, and Matt had also alluded to it too, that we'll go back and look at this location and then see if there's an opportunity for us to put in a crosswalk. And certainly, we want to examine not just Portal itself, but also, as you remember, across the street is the Menlo Gateway project. So driveway locations, plus sales, etc. We want to take that into consideration when we find the ideal location for that new crosswalk that we're going in. So that would be sort of the answer to this particular question. To answer your question in a more broader term, generally, whenever we receive a feedback such as this, where there's an opportunity in the future to incorporate that, what that does for staff is that we'll note that, and as the future opportunity comes along, like for example, if there's a desire, generally speaking, for the Bayfront area to have more mid-block crossing, then we will start looking at some of the development projects that are going to come in and see where the opportunities are. Or for instance, for instance, sometimes more bicycle facilities. Those are type of things, comments and feedback that we'll take in and make notes of and see where there is a good opportunity in the future to incorporate those comments back in. And sometimes, if a project like this where there's opportunity to do it right away, we'll certainly do that as well. But also, I would say, quite often it's something that we'll take back and make a note of and then follow up in the future.
I think I appreciate that a lot. I guess I just wonder if we should have a stated goal, or maybe that's part of the motion, which is there were an issue of crosswalks and maybe also the one about bus stops pointed out. And, is it okay? Is it appropriate to say something like, we'd like to hear back in 90 days?
Or definitely. And I think, right, some of I think some of this discussion is kind of becoming a broader topic that I think we can later on allude to during our conversation for the subcommittee as well. I know that the chair has an idea about that as well.
All right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And I think as we formulate a motion, it will be a good idea to ask for specific help from staff to ask us, there's a clear sense from the commission that we want to see a more holistic treatment of this area in terms of things like, crosswalks and bus stops and whatnot. So as we make a motion, and I am not seeing any more hands for comments, so I will see if anybody has a motion that we can start to make. We can ask staff for how to formulate that goal. Anybody have a motion?
Okay, great. So in this case, as I mentioned before, while we are talking about these two projects on a more holistic scale, they are at the end of the day two independent projects. So at this time, barring any additional feedbacks, I would ask for a motion and a second for the Menlo Uptown project first, followed by the Menlo Portal project. But before we do so, I want to give the commission an opportunity to provide any additional feedbacks or thoughts or questions for staff and the applicant.
Yeah, so if we need to make a motion about these things separately, how would staff also capture the desire from the commission for various different things like crosswalks and bus lane and bus stops in the area, and how would that be reported back that it has happened?
Right. So in terms of the bus stop, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, I think that's certainly something that we have make a note of. I'm not sure if it's necessarily something that can be addressed as part of these two projects. As I mentioned, those poll outs are certainly candidates for the future bus stops, but at the same time, I'm not certain that we are far along enough the process to definitively say where the bus stops should be located, as there are currently no routes in the area, and that's obviously a whole different conversation to begin with. So I would say that not to include any of the bus stop conversations as part of the motion, but make that a continued conversation as we continue later on with the subcommittee conversation a little bit later on. In terms of the crosswalk, I think it sounds like there is that desire for at least a crosswalk to be explored and to be installed as part of the portal project. So I would leave that as part of the motion for the portal and not in Uptown. I see Commissioner Baruzzi has a hand, so I don't know if Chair, you wanna.
Yeah, Commissioner Baruzzi?
Yeah, I was just wondering if, thinking back about our previous minutes and then some of these comments that can't be worked into motions, if we couldn't add to our action minutes like a parking lot type place where it's just recorded, like these are the strategic issues that emerged in the discussion of this agenda topic, and we're just listing them here, and that's something that the chair and the staff can go back to for future things to agendize. It's something for the public record, and it just, I think that might clean up our motions a little bit, because often we're trying to make motions that are encapsulating, all of the different things that arose during the discussion, and in an effort to get things into the public record. And I think it would be, this needn't be more than 3 or 4 bullet points, but I think it could really be helpful.
Yeah, and I think that's a great suggestion there. The one clarification I will point to that would be, with the motion, it is certainly pertaining to the project itself, to the topic about some of the higher conversations. We do have that kind of one sentence that described the general discussions. I wonder if Commissioner Baruzzi, if you will be comfortable with that portion being sort of those high level requests / ask / feedback, whatever we want to call it, to be in that portion, and then leave the motion to be just the project at hand, if that's okay with the commission.
Yeah, that was my intent, and sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. That I definitely was actually trying to separate out you know, major discussion points from a motion, except for the ones that we consider to be essential. But I don't want them to get lost if they're not in a motion. I think that was the idea. It's, you know, especially if, as frequently happens, you know, broader strategic issues or themes arise that we keep coming back to. You know, in this case, again, the location of crosswalks and sort of the more thorough planning of circulation for this area. So not looking at things in isolation, but looking at them holistically.
Understood.
And we will leave this item with a recommendation from staff in terms of what to do with that. We will not end this item until that happens.
Understood.
And,
yes.
And I see that Commissioner Cole has a hand. I wanted to say something while I don't forget it, which is that with the reimagined Samtrans, they are expecting that their board will approve the routes by February, and they're doing a round of collecting feedback from cities and communities in October and early into November. So this is fairly time sensitive, that if we want to have bus service, which it sounds like we do, that is a separate thing for staff to be following up, which I think staff is already doing so, but I just wanted to mention that those are the deadlines. Vice Chair Cole.
Yeah, I just want to make a quick comment in response to what Kevin said. I get a little nervous when we separate strategic issues from actionable one-off issues because they are intrinsically connected. So if we say, okay, so as a general rule, we're going to vote on motions that pertain to a one-off issue, and we'll, you know, take some of these strategic issues that keep popping up and we'll talk about them another time, then we don't address them holistically. So I do have a bit of a concern about saying that would be an approach we would never sort of vary from. And the other thing is I'll have to think about this a bit more, but I do feel strongly that this commission has the ability to say, like, oh, I'm just using this as an example. It might not be the right one, but, oh, you know, while we were looking at your maps and plans, we noticed there were no crosswalks. That causes concern to us. That's a safety issue. We'd like to hear about that in the next 60 or 90 days. Boom. You know, I mean, I think we should, you know, force some of these things and make sure that they're followed up on and quickly. And that's my opinion. The other thing is about bus stops, really quickly. I don't know a lot about transportation construction costs, but it seems to me that if we did think a bus stop, you know, would likely be sited in one of these sort of loading zone areas, it's a lot cheaper to just build a bigger loading zone and make it a shared bus stop loading zone than it is to go back and build a bus stop. So that's one of the reasons why I think these issues are connected. I know it makes these discussions longer, but that's my opinion on that.
Yeah, Chair, would you like me to respond to Commissioner Cole's comments?
I guess, like, it would be good to have that like rolled in together in terms of an answer about what staff is going to be doing with those follow-up steps, and then how the commission can be supportive with those things. So
we can talk about it further in our agenda setting meeting.
Right, but I look at this, I would like to cover what those follow-ups are here in this agenda item, but rather than doing it like the back and forth, I would like to get a response from staff about how staff will handle this need and how we can support staff with this need. Should we do motions about the loading zones and then do the like what are the follow-up steps to make sure that these issues are being addressed and what staff's going to do and how we'll support it? So should we do it in that order?
Yeah, I believe so. So I definitely would welcome a motion and a second just to approve the project or not approved, depending on the outcome of the vote, and then follow up by some of the more higher level topics that both Commissioner Baruzzi and Cole had mentioned, so that way we have that as part of the record. into the minutes. And then later on, those would be obviously be good discussion topics as we continue our agenda items tonight and going forward in the meeting as well. Because I certainly recognize what Commissioner Cole and Baruzzi are trying to establish here, that some of the more holistic approaches are absolutely needed when looking at some certain areas. And the conversation as we're having now would be good for the documentation, and also just allowing staff to also take into what you guys consider to be important, and then how we as staff can help the commission establish those guidelines and steps as well. So again, it's going to be a bit of an ongoing conversation, but I certainly welcome the motion and then stating some of those high level conversations so that way it's on the record.
Okay, well, I can make a motion. What was the name of the first project with the one loading zone?
But that would be Menlo Portal. I'm
So I
sorry,
can-
Menlo Uptown.
It's okay. I can make a motion to approve the loading zone proposed for Menlo Uptown.
Okay, great. So I have a motion by Commissioner Cole. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, second by Commissioner Jensen. Great, thank you very much. So we have a motion and second on the table for the passenger loading zone for the Menlo Uptown project. For those that would like to vote affirmative.
Are there, I'm not, any comments on that before we vote? Okay.
Thank you, Chair. Any comments regarding that particular project?
Okay, then can staff help us vote? Thank you.
Yeah, so for those who would like to vote affirmative, please raise your hand and hold it for a couple of seconds so that I can see your hands. Commissioner, great, so that's unanimous. Great, thank you very much. So now if I can have a motion and a second for E3, which would be 2 loading zones for the Menlo Portal project, that would be great as well. Or if there's any further discussion that you would like to have regarding the loading zones themselves. Not seeing any hands raised, so I'm going to take that as no further discussion. So if I can have a motion from a commissioner, that would be great.
I'll move to approve to recommend the plan as laid out by staff.
Okay, great. So that's Commissioner Lee.
I second it.
Commissioner Cole. So in this case, I would recommend that we can put the location or the installation of a crosswalk as part of the motion, since it's pertaining to this particular project. So not sure if that's of the desire from the motioner and the second.
Sure, I accept that friendly amendment, or however this works.
Okay, great.
Kevin, it was Commissioner King that seconded it. I think you said Cole, but it was King.
I'm sorry. Yes, Commissioner King, the second.
Yeah, and there were some comments about the traffic flow in that area. Does anybody want to add anything into the motion relating to those concerns raised about this location?
Okay.
I mean, I was the one who raised some of those concerns. I guess as I think Matt at Greystone pointed out, that the rendering is a little bit iffy, like not necessarily true to the map. I mean, I think it makes sense from a driver and a bicyclist point of view to pull back the turnout from, or the pull out from the intersection as much as possible, just to give everybody a little bit more space. So I don't know if that's an actual amendment to the motion, but just as this is a concern.
Right. So in this case, the friendly amendment would be to explore the design.
Okay.
So that way there.
All right.
is
Yeah,
a bit
I think
more,
that would be,
right.
yeah, just
Yeah.
intersections are complicated and confusing, and so the less you can, impinge on emotions, people having to think about as many things as possible, less things at the intersection, the better.
Right, and earlier we also heard, at least from staff's perspective, we heard if there's an opportunity to create like a door zone area for the pulled out.
Oh, yes, that's right, yeah.
Desire as well. So I certainly welcome that comment. I do want to at least recognize that earlier Matt and Raul sort of mentioned that the current layout does kind of does prevent them from being able to do too much shifting. So however, I just wanted to recognize that we'll take that as a comment, and staff on our end will certainly be working with the applicant to come up with those designs if possible, but obviously cannot guarantee that we can accommodate them. We'll do our best to accommodate them from staff end.
Got it.
All right, so that's approve with crosswalk and do the professional best to avoid conflicts with the locations on the trains. All right. Any further? Go ahead.
No, go ahead. You were gonna.
Okay, if there isn't any more further commentary, can staff help us vote?
Great, thank you. So we have a motion by Commissioner Lee and a second by Commissioner King with crosswalk and also best practice for safety design as two friendly amendments. So for those commissioners that would like to vote affirmative to this, if you can raise your hand and hold it. I see unanimous hands. Great, thank you very much. So at this point, if there's any comments, those high-level comments that any of the commissioners would like to bring up, I certainly would welcome that so that we can document that as part of the minutes, but obviously not part of the motion.
So I want to phrase this into two pieces. One is, can staff describe what staff is planning to do to take into the account looking at this area holistically for needs such as crosswalks and buses?
Right. So I think certainly that's something that as the Bayfront area continue to get developed and with new projects, those are certainly from staff's perspective, we'll be exploring them as we review. At the same time, I certainly welcome if the commission as a whole would like to evaluate this as well. Certainly that's a welcome from staff's perspective as well.
Okay, so what would be a time frame that it would make sense to consider and review that? So does it make sense for like staff to work on it and bring it back in some amount of time, and approximately what general amount of time?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think that's a great question. I think from staff's perspective, we definitely want to get a better understanding of all the developments that are going in within the area, which is partially why we took the time to develop that map that we demonstrated a little bit earlier today, this evening. So I certainly would ask the commission to allow staff some time to look at it and then see how, and then also separately working with the chair and the co-chair at our next agenda setting meeting to see how best to involve the commission in sort of the reviewing of the area, and also ultimately any of the improvements that we want to consider for the area as well, because we do want to. The way I see it, it's a two-step process. We identify what measures we need, and then we look for opportunities to implement those measures.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and then so in terms of getting the commission feedback, one thing that we can discuss in the upcoming segment of the meeting is whether there's a subset of people who is interested in being an ad hoc support group on that. And Commissioner Seabreen is not here, but we can see if there's anybody here who wants to do that, or whether we should assume that it's going to go to the whole commission. I see that Commissioner Lee has a hand. And I also want to ask, were there any other seems, in addition to the crosswalks and the bus stops, that should be considered in that overall look. Commissioner Lee.
Yeah, so just a very maybe high level question for you, Kevin. So when I know that the city has like a crosswalk strategy for like when a place qualifies for a crosswalk, a lot of times those are a lot of those determinations are based on whether, you know, the traffic is there already, right? In the case of a new development, is there an automatic trigger like at the planning commission or like any development, which is like, okay, you have this many people going in there, where's the nearest crosswalk? Like, is that part of the development approval process that they have to think about pedestrian? I mean, I would assume that, you know, bike pedestrian accommodations are part of developments these days, right? As they go through the approval process. So it's interesting to me, and especially in this, you know, massive area of new development, that, you know, what is there a bike and pedestrian plan for M2, right? Is there something in there, and does that include crosswalks, right? And it shouldn't it be there to begin with? Because otherwise, again, you know, as we found out, we're looking at all these things very ad hoc and going like, hey, there's a big development across the street, you know, think about that, right? It seems a little bit strange for us to be bringing it up at this level, right? Like when it should be like in place already, I think is what I'm wondering.
Yeah, and I see our Assistant Public Works Inspector, Hugh, is on board, so I'll let him go first.
Thanks, Kevin. Nice to see everybody. Hugh Lauch, Assistant Public Works Director for Transportation. So, I think you all are acknowledging or recognizing something that's definitely a challenge. I mean, we do essentially have our transportation master plan that's meant to capture all the things that we want to do. We recognize that there will always be times where we need more focused planning efforts, I think, to dig in deeper. This may well be one of them. And, you know, I think there's potentially a range of levels of effort here, right? From something quite simple and easy, and something that, with, you know, the work that Kevin and Patrick really have started, and with the map and some other things, to like come up with some very short term, or maybe they're not short term because the development is still a little ways away, but, you know, as the development rolls out, some shorter term improvements that can help address needs, all the way up to, you know, a sort of focused area plan. And when you get to the higher level of effort, obviously that needs to become part of our work program, and we need to figure out budget and one thing and another for that. I think small efforts where we can kind of help you, help us, help you, you know, kind of come up with an easy plan is something that seems pretty straightforward from my perspective. And it's just a matter of figuring out sort of where on that continuum of level of effort this is going to fall right now. But you make a really good point. You know, this development is coming in and it's happening very fast. There's a lot, you know, we have to be responsive to that as a city, obviously, but we also, you know, that can mean we get a little bit behind maybe on some of the more proactive planning. So we definitely want to try to get ahead of that, and have heard you at the past meeting, at this meeting as well, that's an important consideration. And then I think it's really about figuring out, do we take maybe the low level of effort step first, and then come back to it again as we go forward and as things start to get built.
Yeah, and so thank you very much for that explanation. And I think that, like, on the one hand, it probably doesn't make sense to have every crosswalk for an area of new development like spec'd out in advance, and it's probably not possible to do that until like the buildings are designed in order to know like exactly where the crosswalk would go. But I'm wondering whether there are crosswalk guidelines somewhere, and they probably talk about the level of car traffic. I am wondering, as the city is building out some new mixed-use neighborhoods, do our guidelines also talk about crosswalks, not only about how many cars there are going by, but about adjacent uses where there's going to be logical needs for people to cross the street? Because that's something that's come up in this meeting as we're talking about this mixed-use area, that, well, you've got a school across from homes, and you've got a workplace across from homes and stuff. So I think the other question for staff is to take a look at our crosswalk guidelines and make sure that the consideration of adjacent uses are considered, not only, you know, the number of cars.
That makes sense. And I would just acknowledge also, right, like this area has got these particularly very long blocks, right? And so, you know, I don't think we have specific guidelines on where mid-block crossings should go, but it's very clear that there are land uses in this area that, you know, given the density that it's going to be, and given the level of, really given the density and therefore the level of traffic, we're going to need, you know, marked crossings of one sort or another, and potentially, you know, other investments as well. And, you know, things evolve over time. We'll probably make a first set of improvements, or potentially make a first set of improvements, and I can see us coming back and wanting to improve those, you know, as more and more development comes in, assuming that it does.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So do we have the themes covered, and do the commissioners, in addition to me, feel like we've got something queued up where staff will work with the chair and vice chair about what staff is going to bring back in terms of the planning for these kinds of facilities in this area? Okay, I am not here seeing any more hands, so hopefully we have this covered to move it forward. So that is good, and thanks to staff and the applicant for bringing this, and to everybody for like raising the issue and not letting it drop. That we will have. I see two more hands. Commissioner Bruzy.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask about, this is something that I see all over the city, is there's a little bit of confusion about when we have no parking areas, how they're designated, red curbs, like signage, et cetera. And I think in some places where there isn't clear signage or red curbing, that the sort of ambiguity allows people to kind of squat in non-parking areas. I see this around town. And I think on a street where we have a couple of really short loading zones and not other on-street parking, it would be good, as we're thinking holistically about this area, to figure out the clear communication around the designating of non-parking and bike lane zones. And I just wanted to flag that as well. Yeah.
Okay, it sounds like a good one for the bucket. Commissioner King.
Oh, thanks. I just wanted to actually thank the applicant for their foresight, and even thinking about the mode of transportation being Ubers and Lyfts, and coming up with the turnout ideas. Because last month when we were talking about the left turn only lane into Facebook, that topic wasn't even broached, and they are the building with the large capacity. So thank you, applicants.
Okay. Great. So unless there are any other hands, we will be considered done in this item and be ready to move on to the next one. Right. So
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate your time tonight.
Good night. We'll move on. Okay. So moving to the next item on the agenda, now that we have done the loading zone items as our E2 and E3, we are moving to another substantive item, which is to E4, recommending to the City Council to adopt a resolution to approve through and left turn movements from Southbound Garwood Way at Oak Grove Avenue. And I forgot to say thank you for the map. That map is so much easier to understand and orient than the previous technical documents that engineers can understand and some of us don't. So thank you for that. And now back to E4, which is the Southbound Garwood Way. Can Kevin Chen introduce the item?
Great, thank you again, Madam Chair. So tonight, the presentation will actually be given by our own Esther Zhang. So I believe this is her first time with the commission. So I want to take this opportunity to introduce her. She is one of the newer members of the transportation team, along with the two that I introduced. So certainly happy to have her on board. She actually started with the city from the land development area and decided to come to transportation because she knows that the transportation group is the better group of the two. Just kidding. So with that, I will let her take over, and then I will navigate this slides. Thank you.
Yeah, and does Commissioner King have a hand raised from the previous item, or is this a current hand? Okay, great. Thank you very much to Esther. How do you pronounce your last name? John. Okay. All right.
Okay, Esther, go ahead and take it away.
Do we have the presentation open? Can maybe, okay. Okay, looks like it's ready. So thank you, members of commission, for having me here today. My name is Esther Zhang, and I'm an assistant engineer with City of Menlo Park. I'm here today to present the Garwood Way turn restriction at Oak Grove Avenue. Next slide. So on the agenda tonight, I will be presenting the background, providing the need for this turn restriction, discussing congestion analysis, and then I will end with recommendations and next steps. Next slide. Garwood Way, Oak Grove Avenue intersection is located to the east of the development project at 1300 El Camino Real, also known as the Spring Line. And as you can see on this aerial image, the Spring Line project is bounded by El Camino Real to the west, Garwood Way to the east, Oak Grove Avenue to the south, and Marriott Residence Inn to the north. The Spring Line buildings are currently under the final stages of construction. The residential portion of the buildings are anticipated to open in spring of 2022, and the office and retail spaces are to be occupied later. Both Oak Grove Avenue and Glenwood Avenue connect El Camino Real to Laurel Street and towards Middlefield Road, and there are class 2 bicycle lanes on both sides of the streets. Once the project opens, Garwood Way will soon become a 2-lane access road, providing direct connection between Glenwood Avenue and Oak Grove Avenue, and it will align with Merrill Street to form 4-legged intersection. It is also a class 3 bicycle route. Next slide. So looking at the intersection of this project closely here, both the extended Garwood Way and Merrill Street are stop controlled on their approaches to Oak Grove Avenue. The Spring Line project EIR previously concluded that a traffic signal at this intersection is invisible due to immediate proximity of the Caltrain Railroad tracks to the east. In our current approved plans, the southbound Garwood Way approach to Oak Grove Avenue would consist of 1 right turn lane and 1 share through left turn lane. And the northbound Merrill Street would maintain 1 shared left turn through right turn lane. Additionally, there are a handful of surface parking spaces available for retail uses near the southern end of the Spring Line project, close to the railroad tracks. And as you can see on the picture on the right, Caltrain had recently installed a mountable median along the existing yellow center line of Oak Grove Avenue as part of the agency's safety improvement programs. Next slide. So before diving into the impact of the restriction, I wanted to provide an overview for the reasons for the staffs to request for a turn movement restriction on Garwood Way at Oak Grove Avenue. So as mentioned earlier, the project site is located in close proximity to the at-grade railroad crossing, and there are potential for vehicle queuing to extend on the tracks. Also, during the railroad gate downtime, all users need to wait to cross tracks, and that can cause temporary delays. At the same time, there are Samtrans and city shuttle bus routes connecting to the Caltrain station from northbound Merrill Street and make right turns onto eastbound Oak Grove Avenue. This image on this slide is one of the Samtrans routes in Menlo Park at our project intersection. When the railroad gates are down, there's queuing issues that are more problematic. To avoid further delay at the intersection, this layout can lead to aggressive driving as vehicles try to look for available gaps from both directions on Oak Grove Avenue to enter the roadway. As mentioned in the previous slide, there will be a handful of surface parking spaces available near the railroad tracks. Patrons who park in the surface parking lot would utilize the crosswalk at Garwood Way throughout the day. There are no marked facilities for pedestrians to cross Oak Grove Avenue on the east leg of the intersection. However, intersection will serve as the shortest possible pedestrian route between the project site and the Menlo Park Caltrain station, and therefore it is expected to generate more pedestrian activities from all sides of streets. And more bicycling is also expected by all user groups to make use of this buffer bikeway on Oak Grove Avenue. Next slide. In the Springline Project EIR, all left-turn vehicles from Garwood Way to Oak Grove Avenue were projected to use either Laurel Street or Middlefield Road to access Willow Road. The projected traffic path is illustrated in blue dashed line and arrow on the left side of the image. With limited alternative routes around the development and high traffic volumes along El Camino Real, the Springline project trips are likely to use Glenwood Avenue due to the movement restriction on southbound Garwood Way. The diverted traffic path is shown in green arrow on the right side image. As shown here, the trips will be added to the right turn traffic at Glenwood Avenue, which then will be diverted to Laurel Street and Middlefield Road. Here, we're also looking at the traffic volume change due to the restriction. This is based on the cumulative scenario, which represents long-term projected traffic volumes. And this scenario captures the traffic that will be generated by a fully occupied Springline project, as well as other approved and pending developments within the city of Menlo Park. And the next two slides will provide the results of congestion analysis on the roadway and intersection. Next slide. From the roadway congestion analysis, there is available roadway capacity on Glenwood Avenue, then Oak Grove Avenue between both El Camino Real and Laurel Street, and from Laurel Street to Middlefield Road. Our result shows that added trips due to turn restriction would not generate new roadway operation deficiencies. Next slide. And based on the PM peak period intersection level of service analysis presented here, impacted intersections are not expected to see significant changes, and delays are fairly negligible. The movement restriction will actually improve the operation at Oak Grove Avenue Garwood Way intersection. Slide. So here is the conceptual layout for proposed configuration at project intersection. Mainly, we propose for an installation of median nodes to replace shared through left turn lane and reduce pedestrians and bicyclists exposure as they cross Garwood Way. Next slide. For outreach, we sent out postcards to the businesses and residents within 500 feet of Garwood Way, Oak Grove Avenue intersection, and we also had reached out to Springline and Marriott Residence Inn, and they don't have any objections to the turn restrictions. Staff recommendation is that the Complete Streets Commission recommends to the council adopt a resolution to approve a through and left turn restriction from southbound Garwood Way at Oak Grove Avenue. We expect to bring this item to the city council in November for approval, and if approved by the city council, staff will proceed with the final design of the intersection improvements. Thank you, and I'm happy to take on any questions.
All right, any questions from commissioners? Commissioner Lee.
So I think just this seems like a obviously great idea because that intersection is just, you know, right now as it is, as I'm thinking about as a bicyclist, you know, crossing that area is a little hairy because of all the our existing intersections, and adding Garwood is obviously a big major intersection. So I'm so glad that staff is thinking proactively about this. I'm also wondering, because of the new development, does it also, did staff consider making turn restrictions on Merrill or Alma? Because again, for all the people who are coming back the other way on Oak Grove, you know, crossing Merrill is, I feel like it's, at least in my experience, crossing Merrill is okay. It does get a little hairy in front of the 7-Eleven, like right before there, because you've got the train track, and then it's fairly wide road coming in right afterwards, which I think is Alma, right? And then the 7-Eleven. And as you mentioned in your presentation, there is no crosswalk there on the other side, and you have to go all the way down to, like, I think Mills, right, before there's a crosswalk. So I'm just wondering, as you're looking at this, did you also consider like the other way and what could be done, you know, given the increased activity here in this area with the new development?
From a preliminary review of the traffic volumes going the other direction, we found that there are quite a bit of vehicular volumes that cannot be ignored. So to further restrict turns in the other side of the intersection, we would need to conduct additional congestion analysis to understand the impact on both Glenwood Avenue, Oak Grove Avenue, as well as all the way towards El Camino Real. So we would also need to go back to Springline and Marriott Residence Inn for this further discussion. But I would definitely take that into consideration for before we go into the city council.
Commissioner Cole.
My question, Esther, is really short. I just missed when you were talking about the outreach that you did to the residents, and I just sort of missed that part. I think it was maybe right before the last slide. And I'm wondering if you could just repeat how the outreach was done and how much feedback you got. Postcards, yes. Could you just go over this again?
Yes. So we sent out postcards to the businesses and residents within 500 feet of the intersection.
Okay.
Regarding this topic, and I guess regarding our meeting at the commission for this topic. And also I reached out to Springline and Marriott for their inputs, and they didn't have any objections at this time.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Any other comments before we see if there is any public comment? I'm not seeing any questions from commissioners. So we'll see if there are any comments from members of the public. If anybody who's a member of the public wants to comment on this item, please use the Zoom feature to raise your hand. I am not seeing any hands raised at this time. I want to bring this back to the commission for any comments and potential motions. Okay, not seeing any comments. Does anybody want to make a motion?
I can I can. My motion is to recommend that the city council adopt a resolution to approve through and left turn movements from Southbound Garwood Way and Oak Grove Avenue.
I'll second.
I want to comment and make the same comment that Commissioner Lee meant, which is thanks to staff for being proactive. We had the kind of painful experience on the other side of the Caltrain station before turn restrictions were put into place, and saw how valuable they were. So thank you to staff for getting ahead of this. Any other comments before we vote.
Great, thank you, Madam Chair. And just to make sure that we are conclusive with the motion here, is there a desire from the commission to at least ask staff to explore the other two directions, specifically the one on Merrill and then also the one on Alma, because they do, as Esther mentioned, would require us to evaluate them a little further more before we make that recommendation to the city council. So I just want to make sure that that's part of the motion.
I mean, I was the one who brought it up. I would love that if you guys would take a look at the same time, because I feel like there's just that part of the road. I think it's like bumpy. There's a grade change. There's just, as a bicyclist, I just know like going over that area for some reason, like I think maybe because Garwood's not opening yet, the uphill, towards El Camino is not as bad, but there's like, I don't know exactly what can be done there. I think it's because there's such a wide road right after the tracks and cars are coming out there trying to figure out how to cross, that it just feels precarious to me. Like I'm always like, can I cross, to wave my way and just like make eye contact with everyone. It just feels dangerous. And so I don't know what Katie would know, because she knows everything about the accident situation in that area. Again, I just think that, because it's at an at-grade crossing right now, and we don't have any plans to change that anytime soon, that given this new development coming in, given the sort of, popularity of farmhouse Thai cafe thing and all that stuff over there, there's just a lot going on. On the weekends, it's super busy when more people are, biking for leisure. And so I think it's a great time and opportunity to just say like, hey, let's look at all the different things that are feeding into that confusion right at the train tracks. So if we could make that recommendation, it would be a big part of the motion. Fantastic. Yes, let's do it. Kevin, you raised your hand for wanting more work, right? So yes, I would like to take advantage of that.
Sorry, Kevin, are you asking, may I just get a quick clarification? Like Lydia's expressed an interest in exploring different parts of that same area. I know it well as well. I live near there. Does that immediately require staff to like do a labor intensive investigation, or can the recommendation be something like, I suggest you see if this is worth investigating? Do you know what I mean, Lydia? Like, what extent to which do you want them to perform the analysis?
Gosh, maybe I should throw it back to you, Kevin. What seems feasible and reasonable to you?
Yeah, no, I appreciate Commissioner Cole for bringing that up. I would say that from staff's perspective, there's definitely an opportunity for us to at a minimum look at the existing demand, or in this case, existing being pre-COVID, obviously, of the left turns out of Merrill onto Oak Grove, as well as the left turns out of Alma onto Oak Grove. I think there's definitely an opportunity for us before we go to the city council to at least look at the number of volumes there and have an initial assessment of the amount of effort that we need to go into the analysis if we do decide to pursue that option. So I think that's certainly a fair request from the commission, and certainly will require a little bit of work at this point, but certainly not. If we do decided that, hey, we're going to need a lot more work in order to get those closed down, or more outreach for that matter, then obviously we wouldn't do that as part of this project, but we would do it as a separate effort in the future.
Got it. Thank you.
Yep. Okay, great. So with that in mind, I do have a motion by Vice Chair Ko, and then a second by Commissioner Lee. So for those that would like to vote affirmative to the motion plus that friendly amendment, if you can raise your hand. That's everybody. So great. Thank you very much. And thank you, Esther.
Thank you, Esther.
All right, thanks, and welcome Esther to this role.
Yes, definitely happy to have her.
All right, cool. So we will now move on in the agenda to the the next item here, which is E5, evaluating commission subcommittees to support city council priorities. And I believe that staff was going to summarize how far we had got last time and what we have next to do on this item.
Yes. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. So I did make some notes, went back and listened to the meeting again and made some notes. So I'm going to go ahead. So this is what I would recommend. I'm going to go ahead and summarize what was discussed previously. And then obviously we pass the baton back to the chair to see how we want to carry this conversation forward. Just a brief summary from what we had talked about previously. Several subcommittees were touched upon. So I'm going to go down one by one. First and foremost, the Climate Action Plan Subcommittee. I think there was generally a desire, a recognition that it's a much broader topic, and many of the type of projects that could come out of that effort could potentially be handled by other subcommittees. So for instance, the Zero Emissions Subcommittee, the TMP Implementation Subcommittee, and the Multimodal Subcommittee. So at the end of that conversation, I believe there was a desire to at least dissolve this particular subcommittee and reallocate some of the resources to the other ones that are already handling those type of topics and issues. So specifically, Commissioner Jensen then becoming a member of the Zero Emissions Subcommittee. There was also a brief conversation about downtown access and parking subcommittee, again, revolving a potential overlapping effort specifically towards the exploration of e-bike subsidy for the downtown employees, and potentially having that be part of also the Zero Emissions Subcommittee, although again, both of those actions by those subcommittees were simple suggestions at that time. No actual formal recommendations were made. And then also just briefly talked about also the Safe Route to School Subcommittee, recognizing that they are currently taking on the responsibility of evaluating the current status of the Safe Route to School program as one of the new addition to our work plan, this year's work plan. And concluding with the Zero Emissions Subcommittee, which I believe toward the end of that conversation, both Commissioner Jensen and Cromie believe that there's probably a need for an offline conversation before some further discussions. So those are what I have as far as the actual subcommittees are concerned. There were also a few general topics that were covered that could fall under a subcommittee or a future conversation. So I want to highlight those as well. So the first and foremost is if there's a desire to structure the subcommittees in a more ad hoc, project related, and this was a conversation about the subcommittees being higher level versus more project specific. That was one of the topics of discussion. And then the next one is given that we have quite a few new members, a desire to know what can be discussed or what cannot be discussed offline with commissioners. I think that's probably going to be something that involved the city clerk as well. So I have initiated a conversation with the city clerk, although I don't have any update for you for this meeting. Hopefully we'll have some at the upcoming meeting. The last two topics that were discussed were more towards the commission as a whole, I believe. One was about how the commission can be more active when it comes to development projects, specifically revolving pedestrian and bicycle infrastructures. And again, I think that's a conversation that we could be had as part of this effort. And then lastly, just a overall policy question, how can the commission be more involved with citywide policies? So those were kind of I would consider them to be side topics, if you will, that are not necessarily directly involved with the subcommittees, although they could. So hopefully that's a good enough summary for the commission here. And at this point, I'll pass the baton back to the chair and get a sense of direction that the chair would like to go to.
Okay, so thank you very much for that extremely helpful summary in catching us up to as far as we got last time. Last time we got through a good number of the subcommittees, and I'd like to go through the remaining few about what they are working on or would like to do differently or disband and not do at all. And then I'll have one question going back to one subcommittee that was already covered, which was kind of exploring what it should do. And then once we're done with that inventory, we can go over to the theme. So looking at the subcommittee, there is the multimodal metrics, which has a job from City Council. And so that seems to me that we should continue to do it. And I think one question about that is, do we want to consider that multimodal metric subcommittee as a time limited thing that it will disband once its initial assignment is done? Or is there any thought that this should be a ongoing need thing? And I want to put that to the other members of that subcommittee, Commissioners Baruzzi and Altman.
Yeah, I agree. I think it should be task oriented with a finite end date. I think clarification about, the actual objective, I think would be helpful, but I think it should be time bound.
Okay. Commissioner Baruzzi, you agree with that?
I agree. We had a little bit of we attempted to meet and managed not to quite make it this last time. But we have, I think we were sitting in separate Zoom rooms somehow. But we have some good reading from Hugh, and we'll need to meet within the next week or two to touch base on that, and then come up with. I really think this is something we should probably try to get agendized for the commission within the next 2 months, if possible, unless there's a huge backlog of stuff. And then we can move that on to council. That would be my recommendation, because I believe what Kevin Chen had said when I spoke with him way back when this was a wholly different subcommittee was, what they're looking for is high level guidance, not highly technical or specific guidance. Kevin, does that sound about right to you?
Yeah, definitely. I think given the sort of the idea, given that the idea is relatively new, I think starting with a high level conversation would be more beneficial. And the reason why we say that is because kind of knowing that high level conversation allows us staff to look into some of the more technical aspects that can generate conversations or satisfy those high level ideas that the commission have.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and I think in terms of how long this ought to take us and a little bit more about how to work with staff, since Hugh is the person who is working with us on that, I would suggest that we talk to Hugh and work out a little bit more about the scope of what we're doing and how long it's going to take, rather than trying to figure that out in plenary session here right now. So we can work with staff to figure that out, report back at the next meeting, and figure out when we're going to report back with what we have concluded. Commissioner Altman.
Yeah, I agree with that. And thanks for all the docs, Hugh. Great reading.
You're welcome. Enjoy, and happy to meet with you all when you find a good time and have a chance to look at this.
Okay, you come to the right place when you find people who are smiling with joy and investigating the multimodal metrics.
For full disclosure, everyone should know that I helped write some of those documents. So,
in doing the research, Commissioner Baruzzi unearthed the letter that I wrote to City of Palo Alto on the topic. I think it was in 2014. So Nerds Unite. Moving on to so for the multimodal subcommittee, which also got a stronger assignment from the work plan, where City Council did approve the seamless transit principles, which may involve working with staff on various recommendations for issues that are moving forward at a regional level to have a seamlessly integrated public transportation system. So I think that can, and that's an ongoing thing. There is a stream of public transit regional network programs that are moving at a regional level that have the potential to benefit or impact the city of Menlo Park. And so it's not a time limited thing. It's a stream of, like, if the region finishes having a seamlessly integrated transit network, it's certainly not going to be on my term on the commission. So how to recruit other people who are also interested in working on that is another question that it would be good to actually talk to staff about, maybe in one of the planning meetings. But I think that is good where it is, unless anybody has any thoughts about wanting to join it, which, do we have enough room on that? Yeah, we have, if anybody else wants to join a subcommittee working on issues relating to public transportation and transportation demand management, that's there's room. Let's see, on the transportation master plan implementation, which had been looking at on a year-by-year basis for opportunities to pick projects and shape projects out of the transportation master plan to reduce vehicle miles traveled by improving safety and providing compelling alternatives to driving. Are there any thoughts from fellow commissioners on like what to do or change from that subcommittee?
Honestly, I always get confused about which one. Like, there are two subcommittees that have almost identical membership, and I'm always trying to remember which one is which sounds ridiculous. But I guess with this one, this one thing that comes to mind is that having weighed in recently during the time when council was doing goal setting and looking at CIP, it seems like the subcommittee could, on an annual basis, like continue to weigh in that fashion, and then perhaps be active on specific projects related to TMP implementation as they emerge. So, for example, if Middlefield is being repaved and there are TMP projects associated with Middlefield, then we can Brown Act together and work with staff a little more closely on that. That's an idea that I would throw out there. So it's a little bit ad hoc. It's like it's ongoing, but it's not as though every single month there's definitely something to do. It's more like, what's the next project, and have we weighed in?
Mm-hmm. Which is, I think, like the definition of something that is continual versus continuous. So like continuous is a stream of things and continual is a series of chunks of things. So is any, Commissioner Seaborn is not here. Commissioner Altman, do you have any more thoughts on that?
No, I don't have any more comments. I'm a little bit confused about the end state for that. If it's continuous, that's fine. You know, I'd like to know more about it, I guess, as we get into it.
Yeah, okay, and I think we can meet some more and you know, give a little more background about what we have historically done and what the next steps would be on that. So it's not something where you meet every month that there's something to do on it, but there are things to do, you know, several times per year on this, and we can meet and talk more about it. The question I have in wanting to go back in terms of a subcommittee that was exploring what it wanted to take on given the current state of the world was downtown access and parking G2. So have the members of that subcommittee done any additional reflection about what that subcommittee, you know, wants to continue to do as an ongoing project, a time-limited project, or, you know, disband and not being a project at all? Any updates?
I think that Katie's done a good job of sharing some ideas with Brian and myself about areas to focus on. I won't use this excuse again, but having been sick in the past month, I haven't really connected with my two fellow members of the committee on this.
I think that we have a near-term opportunity to talk about downtown configuration, depending on what the city decides to do with the temporary street closures. And that would be that's one thought I had. I feel like we had talked about the idea of the e-bike pilot, but I think that might have gone to a different subcommittee. I think Chair Levin just brought that up as a zero emission subcommittee idea.
Yeah, I thought that went to them. I did.
Yeah. So I
It
think
sounds like the subcommittee has not met. And so perhaps what can be done is for that subcommittee to meet and consider its tasks and mission and report back, because it sounds like that has not happened since the last meeting. So that can happen in the future.
Yeah, I think that sounds like a good plan.
I agree with that.
Okay. So I think we have inventoried all of the subcommittees and have a disposition for all of them, including is it time limited or is it ongoing, and you know, kind of what it's doing and how it's supporting council priorities. I have one question about the things that we did and then want to move on to the themes and then close this out. The question I have about the climate related subcommittees, which is going to be a, you know, might invoke a change in structure at some point, is the goal out of the climate action plan to set a goal for VMT reduction with staff support. This was something that we had wanted to do in support of the climate action plan when the climate action plan is before the council for review. And at that time, we heard from staff that there wasn't, you know, that was a time that there were staff transition and people were being hired in, and there was no staff to work on it at that time. So we said we wanted to include that for future scope at such time as there's staff available to work on this. You know, and that might not be this year, that might be next year. So does staff have any visibility as to when there would be staff to work on it? Because once that happens, we need to figure out how to configure ourselves to work on that project.
Great. Thank you, Madam Chair. If you don't mind giving me a refresher about specifically the task that you're looking for, I think that would help me tremendously.
Yeah, this is out of the climate action plan, where there is a kind of picked out of the air target goal of reducing vehicle miles traveled by like 25% or some other target pulled out of the air. And there was a interest in identifying whether the city should actually have a VMT reduction goal, based on, particular, sub goals with, walking and bicycling and public transportation and other mode shift opportunities. And that was something that we would take on when there was staff to work on it, which there was not at the time.
Right. Yes, I do recall that conversation, and specifically revolving the if the commission is interested in establishing an actual reduction goal for VMTs, vehicle miles travel. So I would say from staff's perspective, definitely we received that direction from the city council. So if there's a desire from the commission to work on that, we definitely would want to maybe assign that to one of the subcommittees, or establishing a new subcommittee. I would say that it probably is a much broader topic that we will want to have first of all, for staff to have an offline conversation about how to strategize, because it does connect with the climate action plan itself as well. So we definitely will need to involve the this EQC and someone else. I see you is on board, so definitely feel free to add to the topics that I have discussed.
Yeah, I think everything you've said is right, Kevin. I mean, maybe what I would just add is that, thinking about both the size of our city and our ability to sort of fundamentally change what happens outside of our boundaries. I think it's probably something that we should have a more robust conversation about, in terms of like what's the work product that we're potentially supporting and helping to develop as part of this, and inevitably there are trade-offs, and I think thinking about what those trade-offs are and whether or not we can get to like a really meaningful target that's very like that helps guide what we do is I think what you want to achieve, and that obviously makes a lot of sense, and of course I support that, and I think we would all support that. It's just a matter of, can we do that in a way where it doesn't disrupt us from doing the things that might actually help move us in that direction? So, I think that's really the trade-off.
Mm-hmm. And so I think the question so I suspect that the nerdly brains that are working on metrics, I suspect that there would be a overlap with the same people. And so maybe we should work on the metrics and then think about how to do the VMT target.
Right.
Unless...
And one more thing I'll add to that would be, at the time of the conversation, the direction that we received from the city council was to let this Complete Street Commission essentially establish a new target. So the first question I would ask the commission is then, is that something that the commission is even interested in? Because it is a bit more technical from a technical standpoint. It's ultimately we are establishing a number. So the technical aspect of it, I'm not sure if that's something that the commission is interested in, or would the commission be more interested in helping the EQC with the 6 goals that have already been established in the CAP, and see how the commission can be more of assistance in that aspect. So I think that would be the first question that I would ask the commission is which direction we should go with.
Yeah, this is something that the EQC asked us to do.
Right.
And we, in some way, we narrowly defined as me, had a strong opinion that we shouldn't pick something out of the air, and that we should work with professional staff to figure out something defensible, where I do think that it's not totally outside of our control. And if you look at cities that are having, for example, transportation demand management policies, there are some levers that the city can use where thinking about a goal actually helps the city use those levers. And so it sounds like, so I think given I have an idea, having to have this conversation enough to maybe come up with something and move on. Because this is closely connected with the transportation demand management, and the multimodal group is working on that, then maybe, and it sounds like Hugh is interested in this topic, that maybe that subcommittee should meet with you at some point and come up with a proposed approach to this problem as a next step.
Commissioner Lee has her hands up, so
yeah,
Chair, do you want to call on her?
Commissioner Lee, yeah.
So I have not been working on the nerdly side of metric things at all. It strikes me per what he was saying, that VMT is a tricky, slippery thing to grapple with, because so much of it is like, is your housing near transit? I don't know, do you have bike lanes on El Camino that let people go across town? It's so many, very complicated, right? So I wonder whether, I'm just floating this out there, whether an easier metric that actually makes that seems very easy to put my grapple with is just like, we should increase our bike lanes by X number. I've seen some cities say like, hey, we've developed, X miles of bike lanes, and that is something that we know that will reduce vehicle miles traveled if you have an easy way to get there by bike, right? So rather than trying to grapple with something like VMT, can we just make it much easier on the city and just say like, hey, we need to put in more bike lanes? I don't know. Does that, in lieu of trying to spend a lot of time figuring out what VMT means for Menlo Park, let's just give us like an easier thing to build, or miles of sidewalks. I don't know, whatever it is, some combination of things that like, it says like, okay, we are investing real money in our alternative transportation infrastructure. This is something that we can all grapple with very easily and in a measurable target. And I don't know what that target would be. That would be something that, Public Works would clearly, want to make sure was reasonable and doable, but I don't know. Alternative?
I think in terms of thinking about walking and biking, there's like, that is probably the case. And, but in terms of things like parking and transportation demand management policy, giving up on goals is like basically a recipe for not achieving any change. So I think it may differ for the different kinds of activities. And so it sounds like, Commissioner Lee, you may be interested in like the part of the conversation that is about walking and biking that may have some different set of strategies. So if we want to say that we want to do some ad hoc work to scope this thing, do you want to join the conversation?
Sure, if it's like an ad hoc thing where we're going to have this meeting specifically where we're going to talk about, what is a reasonable goal for bike network additions or sidewalk additions, sure.
Okay.
I also think that, I also think related to VMT, there's got to be also more specific metrics for, like we are now, like the number of people that are taking public transportation to their jobs or something. There's probably similar, more concrete metrics than VMT that might give us a better that might be easier to get to, right? Because if we're spending all the, I guess what I'm responding is like, if it's going to take us so much time to figure out what meaningful VMT is, then we also have to explain it for every single project, you know, no?
Right. So the goal of this discussion right now is not in plenary to figure out which metrics that the city should be using in order to track and guide the climate impacts of transportation. I think what I would like to do is to have an ad hoc subcommittee to scope the task. And then once we scope the task, that may wind up with a subcommittee. It may wind up with a set of people with a temporary task.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. So count me in on when you've had this, you know, general discussion about what metrics you want to do. And then if you get to the point where you want to talk about, you know, bike and pedestrian infrastructure, mileage or meters or feet or whatever as a thing, then I can chime in.
Okay. That sounds good. That sounds doable. And like, so the EQC asked us to do it. They said, like, we think that the Complete Streets Commission are the best people to think about what our climate related goals for transportation are. So let's, I think we have some next steps on that in terms of using a temporary scoping approach. So that was the question. And then the three other themes we have, and it is 9:29. So I think we can like maybe get through them and then move on to the updates and the rest of the evening, such as it is. Kevin, you had mentioned something about projects and the role in projects, and I had mentioned housing element and the role in that as not a development project, but a more land use related thing. What do we want to talk about that? And do we want to talk about this now?
Well, I think so. From staff's perspective, I would say the involvement with regard to development projects continues to be something that I think would be we will rely on the individual commissioners because ultimately, when it comes to a development project, from the point of the staff's perspective, is that where we inform the commission whenever the project scoping or the EIR session is being heard by either the planning commission or the city council. And then you as the commissioners certainly are welcome to go and provide your feedback for those type of projects. It's not in the scope of things. I think it makes much more sense using the Bayfront area as an example to look at it more holistically rather than look at it individually. So that's at least that's the way that we see it. So it doesn't really make sense for the commission to listen to individual EIR projects, but rather we want to bring that to your attention. And then if there's a desire from any commissioners to look at it more closely, then we'll bring it back and do so. So that's at least from staff's perspective, that's how we see the commission can be involved in development projects. And then of course, regarding the ad hoc subcommittee structures, I think that's entirely up to how the commission wants to do it. Sounds like there is a bit of a desire to at least allow the opportunity to have ad hoc subcommittees, and that's certainly staff is definitely okay with that approach. And then lastly, the only thing would be almost like a commission training to talk about what can and cannot be talked about offline. And that's something that we'll talk to the staff on my end. I'll talk to the city clerk and see how we can best get that to you.
So did the discussion about the individual projects make sense to fellow commissioners? And if so, does that sound like how we want to handle it? Commissioner Lee.
Yeah, I want to bring that up really quickly because there is a project that was developed in recent years. It's on the Roger Reynolds nursery site. Kevin, you were probably around for that, right, Kevin? The Roger Reynolds site?
Yeah.
Okay, so this site has a bulb out right before the train tracks on the west side, basically narrowing down the and making it easier for pedestrians to cross. There's a little lighted thingy that goes back and forth. So, you know, this is right in my neighborhood, and every time I go there, I'm like, you know, this basically is further ruining the road for bicyclists, because they get shuttled into that little narrow place and then mingle with traffic. And there's, you know, again, so this was a project that I would have loved to weigh in on had I known what was going on with it. I had no idea about the bulb out or any of these things that then were going to impede the bike traffic on this road. Until after it was like basically started construction. And I have forever been like haunted by it. So, which is so, anyway, in that case, there was actual changes to the road as well. And and this project did not come before a Complete Streets Commission, as far as I know, because we didn't see it. So that was the kind of situation where I'm like, oh, you know, how do we avoid this in the future, right? Well, at least having the chance to weigh in on it.
Yeah, no, and definitely when we were considering that, that's definitely one of the projects that we had also considered as well. So I think from my perspective, we'll just have to do it we as staff, whenever we review a development project, when it involves public right of way, that's when we'll want to flag that and bring that to the Complete Streets Commission's attention. So we definitely, that's a really good example as to why and how we should approach this going forward. I remember there was another project along El Camino, I forget what the cross street was, that would have a raised crosswalk then that ultimately made its way to the commission as well. So, you know, definitely not a perfect system, but I think collectively we as staff we're trying to do a better job when we review development projects, whenever it involves public right-of-way and improvements along public right-of-way, we'll bring that to the commission's attention.
Okay, thanks.
All right. How about the housing element topic? Because in the housing element process, there is a component in terms of thinking about policies that help achieve the city's housing goals for that element of the general plan that is required to be updated by state law. And so is that something, and certainly in the work plan, we had an item about development projects in general, but you know, housing element is more on the lines of it's at the plan level, not at the individual development level. Like that seems to me like something that we could choose to weigh in on. And like, I think that would be helpful for us to do so. Do any fellow commissioners think that that would be a good thing for us to weigh in on transportation related policies that can help support the housing element? Are people like, that sounds great in theory, but I don't have time, or it sounds antithetical to our mission? Any, does it sound like, hey, Adina, go off and do your thing and act as an individual citizen?
Right. So I guess I'll provide a couple of remarks where the commissioners can think about how involved they want to be. So from staff's perspective, similar to the climate action plan goal that was just discussed, we certainly would be more than happy to assist in any way possible. So from our point of view, we would rely on the commission to see if there's collectively a desire to take this on, or like Chair say, maybe there aren't other interests from any other commissioners, and in this case, we'll just continue to have Chair Levin be the lone soldier for the housing element. But from staff's perspective, we can go either way.
Commissioner Lee.
So, Adina, are you fairly familiar with the housing element plan as it is right now? Is it something
Mhm.
that is, so, okay, because I have not personally looked at it yet. Do you see substantive opportunities where transportation related issues might be involved in that, other than just TOD is a good idea, transit oriented development is a good idea, and that should be, prioritized as much as possible?
Mhm. Yeah, so there are potentially proactive things like how much car parking should be provided and how car parking relates to affordable housing, because affordable housing residents tend to use less cars. And then if you have less car parking, you may have more space for affordable homes. There's also what kinds of transportation features should be provided, like the whole, go anywhere transit path. If those things become available, that can encourage people to use public transit and have, less driving and traffic associated with the housing. So there's a variety of different types of policies that could be complementary to the housing element to help the city get the amount of housing it wants with less traffic and bad side effects.
Got it. Well, it strikes me that, yeah, definitely parking minimums is an important aspect of housing. I mean, again, it sounds like one of those things where someone who is not, like, unless you come in with a lot of information that the public works professional staff don't already know about, then I don't know. I mean, is it more just to voice approval for lower parking minimums? Like, I'm just wondering how, like, as a commission, what are we going to really be offering to what is our value add? I mean, not so much you per se, Adina, because I know you have a lot of value add, but like like whether the commission wants to like give some imprimatur to your recommendations, perhaps.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the path of least resistance for a city is like, not to look at those things.
Mm-hmm.
And, our region has a, history of decades of being car centric and decades of, being more proactive at providing homes for cars. And so I think by being proactive and making recommendations that could, help the city, the city council could choose not to do any of it, but, like I think the path of least resistance is not to explore these topics. So by making recommendations, we could change the likelihood that those are addressed.
Got it. Okay. Well, I guess what are we contemplating right now? Whether we want to start a formal subcommittee to make recommendations to the housing element? What's on the table right now?
Do we want to take it on as a task?
Mm-hmm.
And if we do we want to do it like in plenary or use an existing subcommittee or a new and different subcommittee for it?
Mm-hmm.
And or to say it's 9:40, we're tired. Let's think about this next month, because it sounded from staff that this policy lens would take place early next year, because this year with the housing element, the first thing they're doing is site selection, and that's going to consume the rest of the year. So if we came back next month and thought about it some more, we could do that.
I would say that would be an excellent thing to do, because I don't think people are prepared to volunteer for more work at 9:40.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So from staff's perspective, then I definitely agree with that approach as well, and maybe just recommend any of the commissioners that might be interested in that topic to take a gander at the existing housing element. I think that will afford you the opportunity to see how transportation gets related to that housing element, and then those topics will get continue to be carried over to this next element update. So as a result of that, if you see those transportation policies of interest to you, then obviously welcome to join Chair Levin. But if not, then certainly it would be okay as well. But I think looking at the existing housing element might be a good way for you to decide whether or not you want to be involved in the process.
All right, and I can poke around with some organizations that are doing bunches of work as citizens on housing elements and see if I can find any examples of cities that have done transportation policies relating to housing elements. All right, I think in terms of the Bayfront area, crosswalks and whatnot, the next step on that is going to be with the chair and vice chair talking to staff at the next meeting about how it's going to come back to us. Is there anything else we have in the queue for this topic tonight? From the subcommittees and the inventory of topics that staff had mentioned.
I guess one suggestion that I'll just kind of throw to the table and see if anyone is interested would be, given that there is this ad hoc subcommittee that we're interested in establishing between Commissioner Lee and Chair Levin, that is also climate action related, that perhaps we utilize the existing subcommittee that we have right now, which is the climate action subcommittee. And then maybe what we'll do is we'll remove Commissioner Jensen from that post, since he's now part of the Zero Emission Subcommittee. And then maybe for the time being, add Commissioner Lee to that post. So that way we have this formal subcommittee that is available for the two of you to have a more in-depth dialogue with yourself and with staff as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, with the initial task just to scope the task. And then once the task is scoped, then that might be different people working on the actual task.
Exactly, right.
Yeah, I'm happy to be added if that means that Adina and I can talk more freely. And I can bug you.
All right, and it sounded like Hugh was the staff contact person, if I was correctly deciphering here. So,
Sure.
All right. So I think we may be done with this item. Staff, do you have enough feedback from the commissioners about what the subcommittees are for and how they are supporting the city council's goals?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. And especially for new commissioners who are like soaking everything in and thinking, are there more things that I would like to get involved with than I am? Please continue to contemplate these things, and maybe what we should do on a regular basis as we're going through the subcommittee reports, if somebody's like, I'm not on enough subcommittees and I want to be working on that, like, please do. We should have an opening to do that. Don't feel constrained just because you have not yet jumped in yet. There's still opportunities to jump.
Making that
okay.
point. Thank you.
Okay, so moving on to informational items F. I didn't ask whether there were any members of the public that wanted to make any comments on this rather commission introverted discussion about how to organize itself. I'm not seeing any public comments on this topic. Now we will move on to informational items, which are transmitted to the commission in staff's effort to provide an update on matters of importance to the commission. These are not action items. However, a commission, city staff member, or member of the public may request to make a comment or ask a question on informational items. Can Kevin Chen proceed with any informational items?
Great, thank you, Madam Chair. I have 3 items I wanted to update the commission on. First 2 are project related. The third one is also project related, but also with a small request from staff. So the first 2, the first one is that we are currently seeking proposal for to study El Camino Rail crossing. So this is for some of you that might know, there are currently locations, signalized locations along El Camino that are missing crosswalks. So this is one of the projects that were highlighted as part of the older El Camino corridor study that was back in, I think, 2017 or so. So now it's finally something that we're moving forward with. So very excited to have that proposal out in the public. We're expecting to have a consultant selected for that effort within the next month or so. We are also preparing documentation so that we can release a proposal to do the quiet zone study. So as many of you know, it is one of the items that were added to the City Council work plan by the City Council. So as a result of that, that is something that staff is taking an active role on, and we are expecting to release a proposal for that study within the next month or so.
Sorry, the which study?
The quiet zone study.
Quiet zone, rail quiet zone for the Caltrain crossing. Thank you.
For the crossing, yes. So that was one of the new items added by the City Council for this year. Lastly, that might be of interest to some of you, the county is looking to do a transportation study for Coleman and Ringwood. So this is along the entire stretch of Coleman, along basically Ringwood, I believe from Bay to Middlefield. Generally speaking, it is going to be a ped and bike planning study, so fairly high broad topic at this moment in time. Obviously, they'll be evaluating some traffic calming measures as well as multimodal safety measures as part of that study. So the county has reached out to us to be a partner on this effort. I was wondering if there's any commissioners that might be interested in becoming a member of the Community Advisory Committee. Already seeing some hands up, so definitely some enthusiasm there. So I guess I'll conclude my announcement and maybe open the table up to anyone that might be interested in pursuing that role. We'll take documentation of the names and then subsequently connect with you offline.
I had heard about this in a different meeting and reached out to the county representative and have been emailing, and I just wanted to let you know that I'd started to connect with them already without waiting to be invited by the city. So I can, if somebody else wants to take that on, given my number of extreme.
No, if there's one position, Katie should take it, but if there's.
Well, no, I'm also wondering if like so I might need to recuse myself on any official vote that our commission does. Like my understanding this scenario well is partly because of, anyway, go ahead. Are you interested, Commissioner Cole? Because I can.
Oh, sorry, I called you Katie, Commissioner.
That's okay. No, this is
no. I'm interested in part because I just happen to know that section of road quite well. I used to live right near there, and one of my son's best friends' families live there, so I drive it all the time. But and it's overdue for sure. But if really, truly, if there's one role, I really, Commissioner Brizzi, you are much more, well versed in these things, and please take it. I thought it was more like, oh, who wants to help out?
Yeah, I think it might be who wants to help out.
Okay,
Kevin, who wants to help out? Maybe Commissioner Cole and I could work on this together.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I think I maybe Hugh can speak to that. I know that they're looking for one participant,
okay.
But certainly with the commission, if there's 2 commissioners that are interested, we can think of a different way of doing it. But as far as the county is concerned, they're soliciting one member.
Yeah, and maybe just to I can add on to that a little bit. So we're having these conversations with the county. They've started their process, and Commissioner Brizzi, you've interacted with them clearly, and it's been going on for a little bit. And we did get authorization to join from council as part of the sort of a couple months ago as part of a. So it's we still have to go back and get like the specific, the deal as it were, but we do have sort of general direction that is on the priority list now. So and they're forming a fairly, what I would call, comprehensive community advisory committee that has a lot of people on it from a lot of different. So that's all, we've seen some drafts and had some conversations, and so it's not clear that there'll be one role or not one role, I would say, but why don't we take both of your interests and we can kind of get back to them. And there's a whole bunch of roles that they imagine filling, parents, students, schools, other folks. So they're trying to, touch all the different, as you do in these kinds of studies, right? All the different.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah, so maybe we can brown act on this together and then go from there, if that works.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Great.
And that would also just add that, there will be times in the study where I'm certain that we will come to the commission and present, they will, we'll have our consultant come to the positioning commission and present, when, at certain kind of key juncture. So everyone will get a chance to also see it and provide feedback.
I'm just going to say briefly, the Atherton Police is probably involved in this too, yes? As one of the interest groups?
They're
Okay,
definitely one of the interest groups. Yeah, it involves Atherton and the county and us,
Yeah.
a lot of folks.
I just know that some of the police officers have some very specific ideas about how things could be improved, so it would be great.
That's good to know. Yeah,
Their
appreciate that.
ideas in there, yeah.
Are we done?
Are there any other updates that come from commissioners on informational items and or any comments from members of the public on informational items? Not seeing any hands on the commission. I am not seeing any hands from members of the public. Since we have gone through subcommittees in the previous item, I am wondering whether we have any more news from subcommittees. The answer is probably not, but actually there might be. So let's inventory them and go through this really quickly. Committees and subcommittee reports. On the climate action plan, we decided to make a temporary change or a task-oriented change to that commission, and I guess we're going to come back and vote on it at the next meeting. Is that correct?
If you're referring to adding Commissioner Lee, I think with acclamation we can just go ahead and have that be accomplished through the last item. So. Okay.
Have we acclaimed? Quietly
Yep.
entirely?
Yep.
Okay, we have entirely acclaimed, yay. I think downtown access and parking said what they were going to do now. So are there any more words needed in order to move on that? No is a reasonable answer. Okay.
Actually, can I ask? I hate to ask this because I really want to. I'm falling asleep here, but I feel like Hugh might have had some updates on the downtown traffic flow situation when I spoke with him maybe last week, and I wondered if he could share that with the commission so that I don't accidentally, get it wrong. There had been some concern about traffic flow around the Walgreens and Starbucks, and I know that city staff and the PD were down there looking at it, and I just, if I don't know, yeah.
Yeah, I'm happy to do a quick update, Chair, if that's desired. So we did go out at various locations at various times, and actually I passed through there today and relocated a sign to its correct location again. So there's some challenges, I think, given the temporary nature of things, but a couple different things have happened. So we did move some things around and try to make the signage a little bit clearer and more obvious to folks. That was one of the things we did. We are looking at refreshing some of the striping that's out there on the ground because it's starting to fade a little bit, and we did have noticed a variety of things happening at the location. The police have also been out a couple times and have been talking to the students and providing some information to them just sort of an informative educational way. They've also been out down near Hillview in the mornings as well to try to help have a little bit more of a presence there as well. So there's been some of that that's happened. And, we continue to monitor it and watch it. And certainly as you hear things, let us know.
Is there any update on the possible addition of a temporary stop sign at that intersection?
Yeah, I think in principle that we're supportive of doing that. And so we just need to work and figure out exactly how we would do that and do it in a way where it wouldn't be moved to an incorrect location, because that would be very unfortunate. It's one thing if they move the only right turn sign to the wrong location, but it's a little bit different if it's a stop sign. So.
Thanks.
All right. So G3, the multimodal metric subcommittee said what it was going to do next. Does anybody feel the need for any more updates on G3? Hearing none. The multimodal subcommittee, I want to report that I learned that some combination of Samtrans and the San Mateo County Transportation Authority, where I can't keep all the different interlocking bodies straight, are going to do a strategic plan for, there's a regional transportation funding bucket where there's a whole bunch of money being collected from Measure W tax, none of which has been spent. And so the county is going to have some money to spend on regional transportation, with decisions being made in a process next calendar year. So that's going to be something to keep an eye out for in terms of ways of spending money to improve transportation. And we like the Dumbarton corridor, so that is some funding that could be used for it. Safe routes to school subcommittee G5. Any updates from safe routes?
I think we need to have another meeting soon. I think that's about it. Katie?
Okay. G6 needs to successfully meet. G7 zero emission, Commissioner Jensen.
Yeah, we also have yet to meet, so no updates here.
Okay. Is there anything here else to, I think not, that I can't imagine that any members of the public would have any comments on those very brief updates, but if any members of the public have any comments on those brief updates, seeing none, in the interest of not getting any more punchy than we currently collectively are, I would like to adjourn the meeting to the same general time next month, and to thank everybody for sticking it out. And thanks to staff. Have a fun evening.
Staff. Thank you,
Adina.
Bye.
Bye.
There.